Hi, in this video we're going to continue creating some materials. We're going to start replicating some sample materials. So I have a scene 08 begin. It has the sphere, the plane, and the same lights we've been using. So the first material we're going to try to replicate is some kind of metallic paint or something that you could use for a car body or something like that. So with my sphere selected, I'm going to right click, assign new material, and we're going to create a blend as always. So with my blend material, I just started Maya, so sometimes it's a little bit slow at the beginning. Okay, here we go. So we can call this metallic paint blend, and let's open our Hypershade so we can start connecting things. Okay, here we are. So I'm gonna grab this guy. Let's make this bigger so we can see what's going on. And I'm gonna create a first material, which we could call this like base paint or base coat. And I'm going to create some nodes that I know for a fact I will be using a lot. So the first one, as you guys have noticed, is the sampler info. The sampler info, it's an extremely useful node. I'm going to create my reverse, do the connections we've always been doing, so my facing ratio to any of my inputs, and then a remap. And connect that input, which was X, to my input value. And I'm going to go ahead and do my out value to my reflection color amount. So this is what we've been doing for our own reflectance curves. But one other thing I want to do is that a lot of paint materials that are based on metals or that have some kind of metal component have a very interesting effect, and is that based on the angle of view, sometimes the diffuse color, what we call the diffuse color, will slightly change. So to do that, the easiest way that we can do is just come and create a ramp. I'm going to get rid of my Play Studio node. We don't need it. And I'm going to use my facing ratio and plug it as my U coordinate. So facing ratio, U or V, either way, and so you can connect them to both. And now here, I'm going to get rid of the middle color, and let's just plug this to the diffuse so you see what's going on. So we have blue in front and red on the side. We don't want it to be that extreme, so we can actually, for the front color, let's pick like a nice darker red. That's a nice color. Maybe a little bit more saturation without it being 100% saturated, a little bit darker. Excellent. And now for a rim color, if you open here, it's going to be on your last color selected, and we can change it just by changing a tiny bit the hue. I don't want to change much of the saturation or the darkness. I just want to change the hue. There we go. Now plug this guy into our base material and give it a render just to see what the diffuse is doing. We are not going to see any reflection yet because our reflection color is still at black. But we're just going to see a little bit of what's going on with the diffuse. So actually, one of the things I'm going to do is move this guy way out of our screen so it's not bothering you. So this is the effect that I was telling you. It's maybe too strong right now. We can come and make it a little bit more subtle. So I'm going to open this guy and move this maybe there. So it's a very subtle. Actually, let me double click so I have complete control. So let's try 0.875. Actually, nope. Here, let's bring, okay, this is 360, so let's bring this down a tiny bit, maybe 345. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Then we can always come and start changing it, but I just want to be able to have just a tiny effect that the hue is changing. Okay, I like that. Now let's start working with the reflection. I might come back and adjust a little bit that hue change, but in the middle, let's keep working on our reflection. So with this selected, I'm gonna come to my reflection, turn this to white, and adjust our graph. So with our graph open, I'm gonna give it a metallic paint. It's a little bit tricky because it's not 100% a metal, but it's not 100% the electric material. So it's usually a little bit of a combination of both. It's somehow between like a polycarbonate and an aluminum or whatever it's based. So we're going to give it a Fresnel effect with a lot of initial reflection. I'm going to come and draw my curves as we always do. Put our interpolation to splines. Have a little bit of this complete Brewster's angle or complete internal reflection angle. That before it starts going up, we have like a little bit of down before it starts going up. So I'm just going to adjust this. It looks a little bit softer. I think that's good. We can always come and start adjusting our curves. There's actually a couple tutorials online on how to create a Python script that given if you give both of the index of reflections, like in their index of refractions or reflectance based on in their index of refractions, always work taking into account both mediums. We're gonna usually we consider that the first medium, which is air, it's gonna have an index of refraction of 1, and then you have the second medium, which would be your object. And there's actually some scripts out there, some Python scripts that will help you create that Maya remap graph. I still like doing it by hand because sometimes you can force and exaggerate some of the effects. So with this given, let's just give it a try and see how this renders. Okay, so it's almost what we would expect, like on a Fresnel reflection. Let's say if we had an IOR of like 2.5 or 3, something like that, we get a lot of front reflections, but we're getting a lot more of those side reflections. The first thing we're going to do is adjust our glossiness. So this first paint coat, it's going to be a little bit coarse, and we don't want it to be that clear in our reflections. So I'm going to change this to Word and bring my glossiness down to 0.8 maybe. Just render it, see how it looks. Okay, that's kind of what I was going for. We're going to have some broad speculars, not very defined, not very sharp, but this is kind of what I'm looking for. Actually, one of the things I'm going to do is that I'm going to bring down a tiny bit my reflection color. We can do it here, or the proper way would be to come and adjust our graph. Just bring these numbers down. We're still going to end at 1. That happens in almost every single material in life. But we're just going to bring down the numbers in between. Re-render again, see what's going on. Okay, I just wanted to bring down, sometimes a lot of these changes are very subtle, but the more you work, the more you're used to, the more you train your eye, the easier it's going to start realizing those subtle changes. So I'm going to leave this here in the meanwhile. I'm not going to do anything else. Maybe I'll come back in a little bit. But the first thing I want to do is, usually paint materials will have that first coat, which is usually based of some kind of carbon molecule mixed with metal, and then you usually will have on top of it a uranate or some other kind of petroleum-based coating that it's very glossy, when I say glossy, I mean like very shiny, very fine reflections, and it's usually transparent. It's creating no color at all. So to create that, I'm gonna just bring another Vera material. We can call this clear coat. And let me bring my diffuse color, make it black. I'm going to bring this guy, duplicate it with the connections because we're going to have a different curve for this reflection. I'm going to plug it, my out value to my reflection color amount. And this one, I'm going to have a way more defined specular. It's going to be, I could go for Blinn, I could go for Ward. It doesn't really matter, but I want to have a very thin coat. And bring my glossiness to probably something like 0.95. Bring this to white, there we go. Plug this as our coat material 0. And then just give it a render and see what it looks like. So you can already see the change. It's not exactly what it looked like on the first one, but the difference is that we get that first base material that has some kind of glossiness, and then on top of it we have this clear coat, and the speculars are going to look completely different because it's not going to be that only broad specular, but it's also not going to be that just small defined specular, but it's going to be a combination of both. One of the things we can do, even though it's not the realistic way to do it, but it helps a lot, is that we can come and plug this guy in the color here, diffuse color, so we don't lose this saturation and hue here. And then just by adjusting this value, if we bring it to 1, we're going to have only that tiny speck, but then we can start playing with these values so we can create exactly that like 2-level specular that we wanted. That's one of the ways we can do it. The other way that we can do is actually have these two guys with different speculars being almost exact replicas of each other, and then on top of it have a very thin clear coat. So actually I'm going to stop here, and on the next video we'll finish this like metallic paint shader.